They taught you to be kind, to be quiet, to be calm. They told you that good people don't get angry, that good people don't feel envy or lust or rage. So you tucked those feelings away, deep beneath your conscious self. You learned to smile when you wanted to scream. You learned to nod when you wanted to rebel. You became what the world wanted, but in the process, you lost something far more important: yourself. Carl Jung called it the shadow, not some horror story or mythical darkness, but the real, living parts of you that were labeled unacceptable, unlovable, or dangerous. Every time you were punished for being too loud, too emotional, too curious, too intense, a piece of you was sent into exile. The shadow is built piece by piece, moment by moment. Each time you are told, don't be like that. And like all things denied, it doesn't vanish. It waits, quietly, in the corners of your mind, watching, remembering. You are not born with a shadow, you create it, often without even realizing. It is everything you've disowned in order to be accepted. All those nights you cried in secret because you couldn't show weakness. All those thoughts you silenced because they were wrong. All those desires you buried because they didn't match the image of who you were told to be. The shadow isn't evil, it is simply honest. It holds truths that your ego cannot tolerate, truths that society cannot allow. But here's the truth they never taught you. What you hide does not disappear, it becomes more powerful. The shadow is not some abstract idea. It is the root of your unexplained anxiety, your sudden anger, your constant inner conflict. When you see someone successful and feel a twinge of bitterness, your shadow speaks. When you sabotage relationships, lash out at loved ones, or live with a quiet shame you can't quite name, that's your shadow bleeding through the seams, and it will keep doing that. Because it doesn't want to be locked away, it wants to be seen. The world is terrified of authenticity. It's safer when you play a role, when you hide your aggression, your pain, your power. Because a person who knows their shadow is unpredictable. They can't be easily manipulated. They know where their buttons are and they refuse to let anyone push them. But you were taught to be obedient, and obedience always comes at the cost of truth. You've learned how to look good, but you don't know how to feel whole. You've perfected the performance, but you've forgotten the actor behind the mask. And the longer you keep the mask on, the more the shadow grows. You'll start noticing it in strange ways: sarcasm that cuts deeper than intended, jealousy disguised as judgment, fantasies you're too afraid to admit you enjoy, slips of the tongue, emotional overreactions. The shadow is smart. It leaks through the cracks, testing your defenses. And if you don't face it consciously, it will find another way to surface, through illness, through addiction, through destruction. What you repress doesn't die, it festers. Jung understood this better than anyone. He saw what the modern world refused to see, that the true danger lies not in the person who embraces their darkness, but in the one who pretends it isn't there. They told you to love the light, but they never told you how dangerous the light becomes when it blinds you to your own darkness. And once the shadow has been denied for long enough, it starts to take over. Not all at once, but slowly, subtly. A cold tone in your voice, a cruel word you didn't mean, a moment of sabotage, followed by guilt and confusion. You don't know why you did it, only that it didn't feel like you. That's because it wasn't, not the you pretend to be. It was the part of you that you locked in the basement and now it's pounding on the door. This is how the shadow takes control. It possesses what it was never allowed to express. The more you repress, the more it finds other ways to live, through compulsions, through nightmares, through your secret habits and worst impulses. Not because it hates you, but because it refuses to be forgotten. You'll tell yourself you're a good person, that you don't get angry, that you're above jealousy or resentment. But those are lies, comfortable lies. Maybe, but lies nonetheless. And the shadow sees right through them. Jung warned, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. The more perfect you try to be, the more violent your shadow becomes. Think about it. How many people have you met who seem nice on the surface, but something about them feels off? A fake kindness, a hollow smile, a pressure behind the eyes. That's not personality. That's a shadow screaming to be let out. We all carry darkness, The difference is whether we face it or whether we let it face others in destructive ways. You can pretend it isn't there. You can perform goodness and paint yourself in light. But the shadow doesn't care about appearances. It will twist the mask. It will wear you down. And one day, when you least expect it, it will take the wheel. And you'll be left wondering, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Who am I becoming? But by then, it might be too late. Because the shadow you refuse to acknowledge doesn't just haunt you, it owns you. They don't want you to know about the shadow, not because it's dangerous to you, but because it's dangerous to them. A society built on obedience cannot tolerate individuals who are psychologically whole. And someone who has integrated their shadow, who has faced their darkness and made peace with it, is no longer easily controlled. They are not emotionally fragile. They do not conform just to feel accepted. They are not manipulated by shame or guilt or fear. The moment you reclaim your shadow, you become something the system fears: unpredictable, self-aware, and spiritually sovereign. From birth, you are conditioned to seek approval. Parents, teachers, preachers, all of them unknowingly reinforced a message: be who we want you to be, or suffer the consequences. And so, like everyone else, you edited yourself. You removed traits that made others uncomfortable. You learned to be quiet when you had something to say. You learned to be passive when you wanted to fight back. You learned to wear a personality that wasn't yours just so you could survive. But that survival came at a cost. You traded your power for acceptance, your authenticity for safety, and your instincts for rules you never agreed to. Now think, who benefits from this? Who profits when individuals are too ashamed to access their full emotional range? Governments do. Corporations do. Religious institutions do. When you are disconnected from your inner fire, you are easier to sell to, easier to govern, easier to guilt into submission. You are taught that anger is a sin, that desire is shameful, that doubt is betrayal. But none of that is true. These are just tactic psychological restraints designed to keep you in line. The shadow, in its raw form, is not evil. It is your suppressed truth. And a person in possession of their truth cannot be bought, shamed, or programmed. This is why so many powerful systems thrive on suppression, because a person who is fragmented, who is at war with themselves, is far too distracted to rebel. They don't fear your darkness. They fear what happens when you are no longer afraid of it. Because the moment you stop seeing parts of yourself as bad and start understanding them as part of the whole, you become ungovernable in the truest sense. You start asking the dangerous questions. You stop accepting false narratives. You stop begging for permission to be yourself. You begin to see through the illusions that keep others asleep. Jung called this process individuation, the path to psychological wholeness. And it isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. But realness is radical in a world addicted to masks. When you start integrating your shadow, you disrupt the performance. You stop playing roles. You begin to live from a center that no longer needs approval. And that's when the structures around you begin to feel threatened. Not because you're violent, but because you're free. And freedom is dangerous to those who depend on your fear. But integration is not just rebellion, it's transformation. Shadow work isn't about embracing evil. It's about seeing clearly. It's about entering the parts of yourself you were told to fear and finding power where you expected shame. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your untapped strength, your wild creativity, your primal intuition. It is the sword you were told never to hold. But once you do, once you grip it with full awareness, it becomes your protection, your clarity, your fire. Shadow work doesn't make you cold or cruel, it makes you whole. You are no longer torn between who you are and who you pretend to be. You stop running from yourself. You turn around and walk straight into your own darkness, not to be consumed by it, but to own it. It is not an easy path. The shadow holds pain and trauma and truth that you've spent years avoiding. It will show you the moments you lied to yourself, the faces you hurt while wearing your mask, the parts of your soul you sold just to feel loved. But in that pain is your liberation. Because once you face it, truly face it, no one can ever use it against you again. You reclaim your story. You reclaim your depth. You become someone who is not just strong, but rooted. And here's the paradox. The more you integrate your shadow, the less destructive it becomes. The darkness you feared doesn't disappear, it transforms into insight, into boundaries, into a quiet power that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You don't become a monster. You become someone who can walk into hell with their eyes open and not flinch. You become someone who holds the fire without burning others with it. You become someone who has met their demon sand, didn't run. The world wants you polished, polite, and predictable. The shadow makes you something else entirely. Grounded, real, and untamed. Not chaotic, not reckless, but aware. Deeply, unshakably aware of who you are and what you're capable of. Shadow work is not for the faint of heart. It requires courage more than most people will ever summon. But if you do it, if you walk into that inner abyss and come out whole, the world will never again be able to convince you that you are small, or broken, or unworthy. Because you'll know the truth. You've seen what's inside, and you survived. No mask, no illusion. Just you complete, awake, and finally, free.